Welcome again to the kitchen of the Celtic Cater. I'm Chef McBride here. Kind of doing something might be, you could almost say a little piratey. I'm having a little eye surgery myself, and so we decided to take this on. And it's kind of a little bit more of a, not a gloss, but because we're dealing with a dish from the Island of Mann. That's right, it's one of those 8 Celtic nations that people don't really know about. It's a little island that's like halfway between Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. And it's situated there, and actually in its heritage, it's actually half Celtic and half Viking throughout the years. And some there's stuff we'll be talking a little bit, but we're going to be doing a cheddar cheese croquette, or what I like to call Celtic fried cheese. So before we get going, or we're going to start going before we start talking about all the stories and all, we're going to be making a little bit of risotto, and we're going to be doing a fried version of this, but you could also bake this. So to start right in here, we're going to go and get our butter siftening. And what butter do we use all the time here? Using a little bit of Kerrygold butter, because we want that nice little sauteed flavor in here. And what we're going to be doing here to begin with is we get our butter melted. Just a slide off. There we go. We're going to go and saute some onions here. As we saute our onions, you just regular white onions or yellow onions, it doesn't really matter, but it's a way of kind of opening up a lot of what we're going to be doing here for this dish. So I'm going to show you a quick version of a risotto before we go on to the main kind of course for it all. And a lot of this really depends on how you go and take care of your risotto. Now you can buy a lot of times in markets right now some already pre-made risotto. It doesn't quite have the right flavor to it, and it's really risotto is not that hard to make. So we're going to take our butter right now, and we're just sauteing our onions up a little bit. We want to soften them all up. Now if you wanted to, you could go and add a little bit of like our all Gaelic seasoning, a little thyme, white pepper, garlic powder. I like to just go with this time, put a little bit of white pepper in here at this stage, and get that into the butter right now. And get that little flavoring sizzling there. And basically we're just sauteing the onions, and then what we're going to add in is a little bit of rice. Now traditionally you should be using a medium grain rice, but you don't always have to use a medium grain rice. Of course, this is, just to tell you right now, this is a little unusual for me trying to go and do all this with one eye. I had to cater a job a couple of days ago. Very interesting trying to go and cut everything up with one eye when you don't have the dexterity, and then pour your hot liquids together. It does hurt when you miss. So we got our onions all sauteed here. We're going to take our raw, straight, dried rice. And what they're doing is we want to just cook this up in here with the onions and saute it on your heat. And you're cooking it until the rice turns a little white. It's going to have little white specks onto it. That's what you're looking for right now. It's also going to get, because sometimes some of them will turn faster than others, you'll get a little brown specks, and you are going to almost get to the point where your onions are starting to turn brown, but you really don't want to catch that beforehand. If you have the right heat and the right size, and I'm using a little bit larger stock pan here, you can go and get a little bit more evenly bit of finding out where your rice gets to. And while you're just constantly, the biggest thing about risotto is you're going to have to be at the pot all the time. A risotto does take about an hour to make, which is why we're going to just do a portion of this right now. So you get to this point right now where our risotto, our rice is just starting to get those specks. We're going to see if we can't see that in our camera right here. Just a little bit of some specks going in there. They're starting to turn a little bit different. And so what we're going to do here, while this is heating up, we come over to our trusty little bar over here, and we're going to fill up about 2/3 of a cup of white wine. Chardonnay is fine, Le Chablis is fine. This is something that I like to go and get the box wines for, because the box wines are really, really good for this kind of wine. Cooking wine. So we can just pour that right in, and you want to pour all of it in at the moment, and you're going to stir around, and you're going to get Again, you can kind of see here, there's a little bit of the browning from the bottom of the pan. And you're going to keep stirring this in the heat that we have until all that white wine is absorbed into your rice. It's a key aspect to use the wine right here at the beginning for it all. So it kind of goes and sets the pace and gets the flavor for a risotto. And what you do is you're just going to cook this right now until, like I said, all the wine is absorbed. And then you can take chicken stock or vegetable stock, whichever one you'd like to go and use. Make a little room here for it all. You're just constantly stirring. It's all this really is from here on out, is constantly stirring. And you're going to get this kind of a glutinous glaze around your risotto. It's from the onions and the white wine. We're going to go and see if you can't see that again here. A little, like I said, a little bit thicker, as you can kind of say, and it'll get kind of clumpy like this. This is what we're wanting, but you have to keep stirring all the time. And this is when we want to go and start adding. You're going to take about 2 cups of your stock, but you don't want to pour it all in at once. Pour a little bit at a time, and then stir. And you keep stirring until it gets to the point where all that liquid has been absorbed, and you repeat the process over and over and over until you have all of your stock already absorbed in. You're going to go and what end result is to make our rice look almost like pasta, kind of almost have a little flavor for it all. And you're going to keep going this, like I said, and you should take about 45 minutes to really do this correctly here. So now we're going to go and skip a little bit of here from where we've done before, and I've already got a lot of my already taken care of here. Now what I've done afterwards is taken some Parmesan cheese when it was still hot, mix that in there, and some chopped celery, and then I put it in the refrigerator for just a little bit so it gets a little bit more of a solid flavor texture to it all. And so it is kind of a lumpy type rice for it all, but it's got that nice Parmesan cheese, got the white wine into it, and the chicken stock. And this is when we're going to go from here to our next stage. Like I said, there's our Parmesan. We had our celery from before when we made this stuff. Now what we're going to do is make our cheddar cheese croquettes. Or, like I said, what I like to call them is Celtic Fried Cheese. Make a little room here on our table here. And you're going to go in, take a little bit, about like almost a, what would be like a ping pong size for it all, and flatten it out in your hand, and you want an extra sharp cheddar cheese is what you're looking for, because you are cooking it, and then fold the rest of that rice around there, and put it in your flour mixer for it all. And you just do this a couple of times for it all. Now, like I said, this recipe comes from the Island of Mann. And one thing about the Island of Mann, their chief industry is, of course, obviously fishing, but also in merchant marine, or basically sailing around the seas and selling their goods and wares all across them. Their goods and buying other goods, because as Island of Mann is a small island, just about anything extra they want, it has to come from across the oceans and streams and seas. So the Island of Mann's merchant navy was very, very prosperous and all over the place, since the whole country just depended on this. And they were found all over the place, trading in France, in Scotland, in even down to Italy for it all. And of course, a lot of times, some of these early ships that they were sailing in were actually left over from the Viking days and their Viking longships. One thing that people don't really realize, they said at one time, well, Island of Mann was like half Celtic, half Viking. What it was part of the Scottish nation, descended down from the lordship of the Isles. actually had married the Summerlin McGillivray had actually married the daughter of the High King of the Island of Mann, and this is all during the time, shortly after Macbeth and Canute and all. But he had married the daughter of the Island of Mann, and so his son Duff later became Macduff, where that Macduff's come from. Was originally the was up to being, he was in line to be king of the Island of Mann, but his mother had an older brother who was actually had been grown up in the courts in Denmark and Norway, and when he came back to the Island of Mann, since he kind of considered his home beneath him, since he had been the high courts of the Nordic kingdoms, he looked it down and he became an incredible tyrant for everybody that was there, and to the point where his own people then resorted to going over to Summerlin McGillivray, who at this time, as I said, the Lordship of the Isles had become one of the largest navies in the entire theater of Europe. We're talking about 1135, 1140 right now. Well, they asked if his son would be king, because they wanted a good king, and so they embarked on almost like a civil war, but it was the largest naval battle of its time. There's estimated between 120 and 150 longships fought in the seas just between Scotland and the Island of Mann, at a time when there were no other ships like this going on, no other navies that were quite so large. It ended up being a draw, and it was divided out between the island being half of it was going to be under the tyrant king, and the other half of it part of the Lordship of the Isles. And then later on, Scotland almost annexed Island of Mann, but then it became independent a little bit later on for it all. Key note to know about all these kind of Celtic nations with their longships and all, where they sailed, they were audacious when they were in all around Europe. A lot of people didn't know. Macbeth, when he was king of Scotland, his half brother was the owner of the Orkney Isles, and he had been out with the great Canute out of Denmark. Well, there was a time when Macbeth wanted to go and pay homage to. He was a very Catholic man, or very, very much into his religion, and so he took a pilgrimage, and sailing on 2 Viking longships, they sailed to Rome. Now, can you imagine the day? Here it is. It's 1040 is the year, and 2 Viking ships start sailing up into Rome. What a panic it would have caused for it all. Of course, not on a warpath, and they were there representing the Kingdom of Scotland, but it had to go and definitely put a few people in their shaking in their boots for it all. But then that's kind of something that the Celts like to go and do. So I've got a number of these already rolled up here. I said you can see there really quickly how I can go and get this all done up. I get them in our nice little flour balls, and then I'm going to take to the next stage, which was a little egg wash and some Panko breadcrumbs. Now, I preferred using Panko breadcrumbs, or what we also used to call in the industry Japanese breadcrumbs. They're very light, they're very crispy. They will brown very, very fast when you're cooking it all, so you have to keep an eye on this stuff. But it does lend a lot more flavor, and they're a lot more, say, puffier than your traditional French breadcrumbs that you might find, or Italian breadcrumbs. So here's where we want to go and do. I like to normally do this. I'm going to just keep one hand, where I'm going to get dirty on messy with this. So you just roll this in your egg yolk, and then in our breadcrumbs. I'm going to place this into our fryer. Do another one like this. We're going to do about 4 of these on this batch here real quick, just to show you what this kind of goes for. Mold these together. Sometimes that's why I like to go and normally chill the risotto for about an hour before I make this, so that all your little cheese balls will stay firmer. Because once they get into the egg yolk, they're going to go and loosen up a little bit. Now, another reason that's really big on the Island of Mann, Island of Mann is really known for its cheese. Oh, it's something that came over and left over from the Viking days, was what they do with cheese, different types of cheese for it all. It's one of the big aspects, the love affair that they have in that country for it all. And their dairy products are really, really huge as well. And just if you're thinking about it, no, it's not called man milk. There's an old joke about that they do over there. So now we're going to about 4 of them. We're just going to place them in our fryer here. And you only want to fry them. We're frying them about 335 degrees. We're going to fry them for about 2 minutes. And we're going to get a nice little crispy flavor out of that. And the reason why we want to use this sharp cheddar cheese, you kind of see this one broke apart a little bit, is that when it opens up, you're going to lose, every time you cook with cheese, you're going to lose a little bit of that sharp flavoring, that actually cheesiness flavor that makes the cheese. Which is why, like I said, already in this batch, we've already mixed a little bit of our real Parmesan cheddar, Parmesan cheese. That's a very strong cheese that's going to give in with the risotto. Now we have a cheddar cheese, a very sharp cheddar cheese center for it all. And that is also going to go and add to our flavor for it all. We want to break this apart. When we come done with this, you'll be able to break it apart and be able to flavor it. This happens, this kind of a rule of thumb, any kind of you want to use with cooking with cheese, whether you're baking it or frying with cheese, you want to normally go and use an extra sharp cheddar cheese. Now, when we do our fried mozzarella sticks or something like that, mozzarella is kind of a different cheese altogether, and we don't really have the cheesy flavor so much as we're going to get. It's just the stringiness and the friedness that we go and enjoy for it all. So now you do not have to fry these. If you're one of those that are always watching on the health and doesn't want to fry or don't have a nice little fryer to go for, you can go and bake them in the oven. If you're going to bake them in the oven, you want to use them at 400 degrees for about 30 to 40 minutes for it all, until it gets nice and crispy brown on the outside for it all. And then you're going to get the really nice flavor for the cheese. This just seems to be a little bit faster, and it does give you a nice little crunch. I've done festivals where when we actually, back in the day, I used to have a food booth, and we used to do this dish, and oh wow, everybody comes running for Celtic Fried Cheese, as I call it. Now, as I said, this is inside our Welsh cookbook, Wales and the Island of Mann. It's called a croquette, cheesy croquette. We call it Celtic Fried Cheese. Oh, and take a moment while you're at it, right this moment, and look down at the bottom and like our page, Celticator, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Celticator channel for it all, please, in the future. We're going to be having some competitions here in the next week, so we want you to go ahead and keep track on us on our Facebook page. We're going to be giving some prizes away, so you've got to keep in and tune in for us all. Almost ready for our... I like to go and keep shaking it a little bit just so that they don't stick to each other or stick to the bottom for it all. This is a nice little fryer that I can go and do about 8 at one time maximum, 4 in each bin. They're going to come out, like I said, you're going to take enough for a ping pong ball, but by the time you go and put the cheddar cheese into it, you're going to be, probably a little bit larger than a golf ball. And as I said, because it's Panko breadcrumbs, you want to keep an eye that you don't overcook and you don't get to the point where it turns really dark brown. Our croquettes should be a nice light brown here for it all. So they're just about ready. There we go. Serve these up, and I'm going to split one of these open just so you can kind of see what we have entailed. So here we go. The cheddar cheese is melted into it. You can kind of see this one. Sometimes you might want to get a little bit larger cheddar cheese. I normally do about a 1/2 inch square, but it's all this nice crunchy gooiness. You've got crunchiness on the outside. You got the gooey risotto in there, some celeries, and then the solid cheddar cheese mix. Oh, I see. Half of my cheddar cheese was left. Try one more. There we go. So you can kind of see that splitting apart and to get that nice cheesy goodness for it all. Great on the cheddar cheese. The Parmesan, this is a great little thing. Like I said, it's a very sophisticated fried cheese. So I want to thank everybody much, and this is how we see the Celtic Cater. Please like us all. And as they say in Gaelic, Slán Flúirt, we all meet again. Thank you very much.